Just a little over a week ago, I spent my week living the life of Jordan Peterson, the University of Toronto psychology professor, as well as online YouTube personality and overall self-help guru who thinks he has the answers for how you want to live your life. If you guys have been missing it, every morning at 8 a.m. Central on my second channel, which is linked in the description below, I've been hosting a morning show talking about how I've been living my life like various business gurus. During one of those streams, somebody came up with a fantastic video idea that they really wanted to see from me, which was me talking about Jordan Peterson's debates and arguments and interviews that he often has with feminists, and talking about why those debates tend to go so poorly for everyone involved. Often these debates will lead to little sound bites and YouTube clips with clickbaity titles like "Jordan Peterson destroys feminist with facts and logic yet again," "Jordan Peterson proves that gender discrimination and sexism is not real and totally slams feminist with a slam dunk." During my week living as Jordan Peterson, in addition to eating exclusively meat and no carbs, one of the things that I did was try to watch the debates that he had, try to watch some clips from interviews, and also read his book, 12 Rules for Life, which I'm going to be doing a more in-depth review of on this channel in the future. A lot of people who really like Jordan Peterson have told me that they think I probably haven't given him enough of a chance, or that he's someone who's very frequently taken out of context, that anyone who really gets to know him and really starts watching him and hearing out everything he has to say will often grow to like him. I've actually found the exact opposite to be true in my experience. I actually was a fan of his a couple years ago, back when I saw clips of him doing an interview on the H3 podcast and talking to Joe Rogan and things like that. I thought he seemed like a fairly reasonable guy who's seemed a little bit socially awkward, and maybe like his beliefs didn't come across the right way all the time, but I thought his heart was in the right place. However, the more of his lectures that I watched, and when I finally did get into reading his book, I realized that Jordan Peterson is the kind of guy who kind of forgets that women exist half the time, or when he does remember that women exist, he treats women as a monolith, and then when you try to apply any of the things he says to lesbians or to trans people, you realize that he's kind of left a lot of people out and has a pretty narrow worldview based on his own experiences, at least in my opinion. However, one problem I've noticed is that when Jordan Peterson does go to get into a discussion or an interview or a debate with someone who has different views from him, a lot of times he will come out looking like he completely destroyed them, like he completely won the debate. And this leads to a lot of his fans thinking, well, this is just because he knows so much more than these silly feminists know. He knows so much more, he has so much better use of facts and logic, he's the one on the right side of history. From watching these debates, I have found a lot of things that both support him and support his opposition, and both show how both his opposition and he himself are using various argumentation techniques that are really not beneficial to society as a whole. So today I thought I would go through Jordan Peterson's infamous debate with Cathy Newman and talk about how both sides were right in some places and wrong in other places, but how overall both of them were just very wrong in the way that they approached the discussion in the first place, and the types of rhetoric and fallacies and things like that that they used along the way. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let's get into it.
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago. You guys asked for it.
What's up, my fellow small business supporters? I'm Savvy. Welcome back to Savvy Writes Books, the channel where we talk about books and business. I'm Savvy, and I am an author and a small business owner, and on this channel we love to talk about exposing business scammers, exposing multi-level marketing world, and also doing some book reviews and writing vlogs. I have a second channel where I host a morning show every morning at 8 a.m. Central, where we live like business gurus for a week. We lived like Jordan Peterson recently, read his book, didn't really enjoy it, but we'll get into all of that. So I really want to go into this debate and see what he's saying, see what Cathy Newman is saying, and talk about all of this. I was a professional debate coach for 3 years. I coached kids who did debate. I also used to be a debate team kid myself for the better part of a decade. I'm a writer. I work in journalism, so I'm very big into finding the facts and finding, what facts support what conclusions and how we can contextualize those things things and report them in an efficient way. So I feel like I have a lot of experience surrounding these areas. However, I am not the be-all end-all. I always give the disclaimer that this video is my opinion. I do not consider my YouTube videos to be journalism. I try to be as accurate as possible. However, this channel is for me to also share my opinion and my own experiences. Why does Jordan Peterson think that he can just slam dunk on feminists so easily? Why does he think that he is the one that is on the right side of history? And how has he been able to cultivate a following that agrees with him so much on these topics? So this debate happened back in early 2018 and is about 3 years old now, but I remember it being very infamous at the time that it was out. And I remember watching it when it first came out, but I wasn't as active on YouTube or anything back then, so I didn't really break it down, even though I did have various issues with it in terms of what each of them were saying. So we're going to break this down bit by bit, just so everyone is clear. I know that sometimes when we're in a long form discussion like this, it can get a little annoying when I pause frequently. However, one, I don't want to get copyright claimed, and two, I want to make sure we're breaking things down bit by bit. So there will be a decent amount of pausing. I hope that doesn't bother anyone.
What I've been telling young men is that there's an actual reason why they need to grow up, which is that they have something to offer, you know, that
Fair enough.
That people have within them this capacity to set the world straight. I don't think that young men hear words of encouragement. Some of them never in their entire lives, as far as I can tell. That's what they tell me. And
here, I think this is actually, I'm going to be agreeing with him on a couple of the first things he says, because I do think that this is an important point. I think a lot of people have different meanings that they attribute to the term toxic masculinity. And I know this because I've talked with women about this term and I've talked with men about this term, and I know that people interpret it differently, and that can lead to confusion within discussions. So let's just talk about the different definitions that people often attribute to that colloquially right now. When I've talked to a lot of men about the concept of toxic masculinity, a lot of them think that means that we think that men are toxic, or that we as feminists hate men or something like that. And maybe that's true for some people, but that is not true for me at all. I actually love men. I think that they're wonderful. I think that men and women and non-binary people and everybody should be treated equally. I've even been the one out here talking about how I think gender segregation in all of its forms needs to end. No bathroom segregation, locker room segregation. I am all for gender integration on every level. So I think what he's talking about here is important, because when I think of the concept of toxic masculinity, I think of it more like I think of toxic positivity when I talk about that. I don't think that positivity is a bad thing. I'm actually a really optimistic and positive person, and a lot of people talk about how I have a lot of energy and things like that. So I tend to be a very positive person. However, when I talk about toxic positivity, that's when we talk about how you ignore negativity, how you ignore realism for the sake of pushing everything towards positivity. We can look at toxic masculinity in a similar way, where it's not saying that masculinity is bad, but the upholding of traditionally prescribed masculinity at all costs is what's bad. It could be the same thing for femininity as well. It's just that a lot of people, when they talk about it, they're talking about the gender expectations that are placed on men not to show emotion and to be more physically violent and things like that, and that kind of breeds aggression over time. If those expectations were placed on women socially, I think it would probably breed aggression in women as well, because having to suppress your emotions isn't healthy for anyone. And I, as a psychiatrist, I bet that Jordan Peterson would back that up, I'm assuming. What he's saying here, I think I agree with, that there are a lot of young men not hearing words of encouragement, being told you need to man up, being told you need to not show any emotion and act tough all the time, when in reality, men need words of encouragement, men need to be uplifted in the same way that women do. And I think that, shifting our focus to caring about men's emotions and caring about fostering that is actually incredibly important.
Does it bother you that your audience is predominantly male? Isn't that a bit divisive?
no, I don't think so. I mean, it's no more divisive than the fact that YouTube is primarily male and Tumblr is primarily female.
Isn't it?
Tumblr is primarily female.
But you're just saying that's the way it is.
Well, I'm not saying anything. It's just an observation that's...
So here's where I think the big problems start to come in. First of all, I think framing this as a debate the way it was is kind of a misnomer. I'm not sure if this was originally framed as a debate or if it was originally framed as an interview, but it kind of got circulated around in the media as this huge debate, this debate that happened, who won the debate. This really is framed as an interview. And I believe this was when Jordan Peterson was promoting the 12 Rules for Life book, so I think he was on a book tour. So I'm pretty sure this was originally originally intended to be an interview and not a debate, and we can see that by the way that she's asking questions, he's answering them, she's asking follow-up questions. I am kind of a debate format purist. I like there to be formats in debates because I think it really helps with people being able to fully share their opinions, fully understand the other side, get a lengthy and complex point out in an uninterrupted manner without somebody cutting you off or taking you out of context or anything like that. That's why when I host debates on my channel, I have a format I use, which is not that different from like a high school policy debate format, but it's basically like, you know, time to say your side, time to say the other side, time in the middle for questions, for cross-examination and things like that, and then rebuttal time. I think that honestly, if we had political debates around elections that way, that would be a lot better, because political debates right now are basically glorified town halls. They're just someone being asked a question and answering it. It's really not a debate where people have to engage one-on-one with each other's ideas, talk about where each of those ideas come from, challenge to see if there's common ground within those ideas, ask why and see where those ideas stem from. So I think this is a big problem that we're having, is that this is already formatted as an interview. The other major problem I'm having with Cathy Newman and the way that she's framing this is that she's saying, so you're saying this. Every sentence she comes out and goes, so you're saying blank. I don't think that's a good follow-up question for an interview or a debate, because first of all, it's a yes or no question. And maybe if you're in a cross-examination period in a debate where you each also have dedicated time to be able to fully develop your own points, it would be okay in that case if you're asking for a clarification so that then you can structure that into your rebuttal in some way. I think that would be completely fine. However, if this is basically like her whole point is that she's bringing this up and going, so you're saying this, that's very easy for him to just go, no, that's a yes or no question, and then that shuts down conversation in that way. Plus, it's very easy for him to now take on the role of person who has been taken out of context, because she goes, oh, so you're saying this, and he's going, well, no, that's actually not what I'm saying, and he still maintains control of the conversation. So I think in this case, she made a huge mistake, and she's going to keep making that huge mistake. I've seen pieces of this before where she keeps going, so you're saying this, so you're saying this.
There's plenty of women that are watching my lectures and coming to my talks and buying my books. It's just that the majority of them happen to be men.
I bought his book.
What's in it for the women, though?
Well, what sort of partner do you want?
Okay, a couple things right here. So I think her asking if this is going to not be like a structured debate and is going to just be a series of questions back and forth, I think what's in it for the women was a better question than, so you're saying this, right? Because she's asking a question that's going to have, you know, a wider breadth of an answer. However, you know, in this place right here, this is where I start to disagree with Jordan Peterson going, well, what sort of partner do you want? Because just a moment ago, he was saying that his lectures weren't specifically targeted at men. That's just kind of the way his audience turned out. He doesn't really know why. But then he talks about how what's in it for women is what partner do they want. That's showing that the main thing in his lectures and his, you know, self-help talks still is about how men can develop themselves, because it's about women's partner. It's not about women's self-development. If he had answered this with, you know, my self-development techniques apply to women in the exact same way, or I give this type of advice for men and this type of advice for women, but he immediately jumped to, it's about your partner.
And
So
that
you're
you can
saying
rely on.
women have some sort of duty to sort of help fix the crisis of masculinity?
Which depends on what they want.
Okay. Again, that's a straw man. So this is why I get annoyed with Cathy Newman in this debate, because she invoked the straw man. For those of you that don't know, the straw man, we actually talk about it a lot on this channel. It's a logical fallacy where you create an argument that didn't exist to refute it. It's as if you got a straw man, you got like a little scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz or something, and you're looking at it and you're making up what it said, and you're debating against that fake person's argument rather than the real argument that was stated. We all talk about how it's easy to win arguments against ourselves in the shower, and suddenly we think we're all super smart. That's because we're winning against arguments that we created ourselves. That's basically what she's doing here by going, so you're saying women have a responsibility to fix the crisis of masculinity. First of all, it's a so you're saying question, which is just giving him fodder to either say yes or no, rather than continuing in a conversation exploring why and exploring the root causes of these things. But on top of that, she's trying to tell him what his argument is and use that for her point of refutation instead of taking his actual words and taking his actual ideas and responding to those one-on-one. It's almost as if there was a pre-written question or something that she had based on her interpretation of his mindset rather than the words that actually came out of his mouth. So this seemed a little bit strawman-y to me. I wasn't really a fan of that. And while I'm interested in whether Jordan Peterson thinks women have a responsibility to fix the crisis of masculinity or not, it wasn't really relevant to the specific point in the discussion. So I think that didn't really serve her purpose or her point in this well at all.
No, I mean, it's exactly how I laid it out. Like, women deeply want men who are competent and powerful.
See, and this is the thing, this is a generalization, so I have a problem with this as well. I'm a woman, y'all. I do not want a man who's powerful. I don't. Do I want a man who's competent in the sense that, like, I don't know. Like, I guess that depends competence in what field, because humans are vastly diverse in what we're good at and what we're not good at. But I don't even want to generalize and say I would require to have a husband who has a job or something like that, because I don't. Like, my ideal situation is actually that in the future, my business will make enough money that I can be the sole breadwinner in my family. Like that, I would prefer that. But you know, I right now, and my husband does work a job that he likes, and I work jobs that I like, and we're both kind of happy in this situation. But I'm the kind of person who I like to be socially dominant in a relationship, if that makes sense. I'm trying to be careful the way I phrase that because people have misinterpreted that as me making it like a sex thing, which is not what I'm talking about here. But I am the person who I don't want someone who seems to exude more power or more confidence than I do. So I think it's a little bit different for everybody, and to say that this is what women want takes some of the individuality and the variation that we as humans experience out of the equation. And even if I'm an outlier, because people have told me, well, Savvy, you might just be an outlier. That's entirely possible. But when I'm listening to this and he says, women overall want this with no source to back that up, it becomes difficult for me to take him seriously because I'm like, well, based on my personal experience, which is the only life experience I've had, I've only ever lived life as myself. Based on that, I would say you're completely wrong. Then I've had other women tell me, well, no, I think that what he's saying here might be true to an extent. So I think what he needed to do here was provide more of a source to back that up. According to 100,000 women surveyed, many of them said that this was their top preference in a male partner, something like that, to at least indicate that he's getting this from somewhere, which I'm sure he is, but he's not convincing to me just because I've never had any experience remotely similar to what he's talking about here. Also, again, this is completely disregarding the experience of lesbians. When we talk about that, he seems to, I don't think, when he talks about how his advice is for men and for women, he talks about women who, you know, want a male partner and things like that. It seems like if a woman who was exclusively interested in other women were to watch him, she would gain nothing out of this. And maybe it is because I am a woman who is interested in other women that I've taken on a traditionally masculine roles in relationships. I don't know if that's related at all. I'm not a clinical psychiatrist like Jordan is.
And I don't mean power in that they can exert tyrannical control over others. That's not power. That's just corruption. Power is competence. And why in the world would you not want a competent partner? Well, I know why, actually.
Okay, so I'm going to listen to him explain why, but when he defines power here as competence, which is fair. I'm glad he clarified he didn't mean in a tyrannical sense. However, he was specifically talking in the context of women want a man who is powerful. Do men also want a woman who is powerful? What does competence mean to him? Competence in what? In their job, in their personal life, in terms of if they keep the house clean? Like, what does that mean to him? I think we need a little more information there, because one big issue that I've realized contributes to a lot of conflict among humans, or among ideologies especially, is the idea that we all seem to have the same goal at the end of the day, which is to happily live our life and do what's best for ourselves and our family. And other people have a completely different idea of how to best achieve that. So what we get from that is people who often use words in different ways, or use a word that might have the same meaning as something but have a different connotation and context, and that connotation and context might be different based on where you're from regionally, based on cultural differences, based on even like if you're neurotypical or neurodivergent. I know I, as someone who has OCD, I tend to take things very, very, very literally because that's just how my brain processes things. So often when someone says something to me, I don't pick up on any social cues or any implications surrounding it. So that's why I think it's really important to define each of these things clearly, especially if they are abstract concepts like the idea of power or competence or something that could mean a lot of different things.
You can't dominate a competent partner.
So
if you want
women
domination,
want to dominate, is that what you're saying?
no, I'd say women who have had their relationships impaired, their relationships with men impaired, and who are afraid of such relationships will settle for a weak partner because they can dominate them. But it's a suboptimal solution.
Do you think that's
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused on what he's saying here. First of all, I like that I am, the more aggressive person in my relationship. I sought that out intentionally. So when he's saying it's a suboptimal solution, why? Is he talking about for like passing on the best genes to the next generation to make the strong race of human warriors? Like, is that what he's talking about? I'm very confused. Optimal for what?
But what gives you the right to say that? I mean, maybe that's how women want their relationships, those women. I mean, you're making these vast generalizations.
I'm a clinical psychologist.
Right, so you're saying you've done your research and women are unhappy dominating men.
I didn't say they were unhappy dominating men. I said it was a bad long-term solution.
Okay, so this is where it starts to get a little bit confusing. First of all, both sides of this debate are fucking shit up. Like, I am confused as hell. So first of all, she does that whole thing again with, so you're saying this, so you're saying that. She really needs to stop that because it's leading into just conflict. It's leading into him being like, no, I didn't say that. It's making the conversation weird and uncomfortable. She needs to stop doing that. On top of that, he's saying it's not a good long-term solution. Why? I assume he's going to go into it, but if you are married to someone that you are happy with and you live a life of happiness and abundance together, but the woman is the more dominant one, which he hasn't really defined dominance either. Does he mean in terms of physical strength? Does he mean in terms of how much money you make? Does he mean in terms of who makes the vast majority of decisions in the relationship? Does he mean in terms of who takes the initiative? What does he mean by that? But if you, in any case, even if you're a woman who's dominant in all of those things in your relationship and you're very happy and live a wonderful life, why is that a bad long-term solution? Also, again, completely disregarding that there are women who exclusively like other women and that they would be happy in a relationship with no man whatsoever, and that long-term lesbian relationships have existed all throughout.
Let me put a quote to you from the book, where you say there are whole disciplines in universities forthrightly hostile towards men. These are the areas of study dominated by the postmodern stroke neo-Marxist claim that Western culture in particular is an oppressive structure created by white men to dominate and exclude women. But then I want to put
minorities too dominate and exclude.
Okay, sure. But I want to put to you that here in the UK, for example, let's take that as an example, the gender pay gap stands at just over 9%.
Oh, fuck, we're getting into the pay gap.
You've got women at the BBC recently saying that.
Before we get too into this, I'm just going to warn you guys ahead of time. When we talk about the pay gap, I start to go off. And if you've watched any of my videos where I respond to Classically Abby, I've talked in depth about the pay gap in those videos as well. And I'm going to do it here too. I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible because I do tend to go on a tangent when I talk about the pay gap. I'm just going to say that this is a case where, once again, they're both so ridiculously wrong, it hurts my soul.
That the broadcaster is illegally paying them less than men to do the same job. You've got only 7 women running the top.
While what she's doing here, I'm not really a fan of any of her rhetoric in this. However, I will say that right here, I like that she's giving a specific example with numbers. It doesn't indicate anything for overall trends. However, I'm glad that she brought it up, and I really would like him to have a specific example to counter that. And this is, again, why I think a debate format would be much better, where it would be like, okay, here's my, 10 minutes of uninterrupted talking time where I'm going to lay out, here's what people say about the gender pay gap. Here are the causes of it. Here are the effects of it. Here are examples I've seen. Here are proposed solutions. Here's how they might work. Then someone else could say, say, here's why those things aren't true. Here's why those studies were flawed. Here's why whatever. And just take it point by point, because this gets really muddled and confusing. And that's why we end up with these sound bites where it's like, this person destroyed this person. Nobody destroyed anyone. This was just a casual conversation gone awry.
FTSE 100 companies.
Yeah.
So it seems to a lot of women that they're still being dominated and excluded, to quote your words back to you.
It does seem that way, but multivariate analysis of the pay gap indicate that it doesn't exist.
Okay. He's wrong on that. Multivariate analysis doesn't indicate it doesn't exist. It indicates that pay gap means different things to different people, and that we'll go into what it actually means. But I do appreciate that he's bringing up the multivariate analysis, because that is important.
But that's just
you
not
do,
true,
you-
is it?
That's
I mean, that
absolutely
9% pay gap, that's a gap between median hourly earnings
Yeah.
between men and women.
But there's
that
multiple,
exists.
yeah, but there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is gender, but it's not the only reason. Like if you're a social scientist worth your salt, you never do a univariate analysis.
I would agree with
Like
that.
you say, well,
Women in aggregate are paid less than men. Okay, well, then we break it down by age, we break it down by occupation, we break it down by interest, we break it down by personality.
But you're saying basically it doesn't matter if women aren't getting to the top, because that's what's skewing that gender pay gap, isn't it? You're saying, well, that's just a fact.
No, I'm saying
women
it
aren't
doesn't
necessarily
matter.
going to get to the top.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't matter either.
You're saying
I'm saying there are
it's fact
multiple reasons for it.
Yeah,
and
but
aren't
those
being
reasons,
taken into
why
account.
should women put up with those reasons?
Okay, this is just frustrating. Her response of, so why should women put up with those reasons? Cringe, bro. You posted cringe, you're gonna lose subscribers, move on out. Jordan Peterson over here, multivariate analysis indicates it doesn't exist. Wrong, just wrong. You got, oh my god, both of you are gonna make me, you're making me hurt. You're making my scoliosis act up right now. Let's talk about the gender pay gap. Someone in one of the live streams where I talked about Jordan Peterson and talked about this, someone brought up that it might be more effective if instead of, the pay gap or the wage gap or something like that, we called it the career gap. Although that would be a little bit more of a vague term. However, we could define a little more clearly what that means and indicate that it is taking multiple factors of career, including pay, as well as including position and job and things like that, all into account. I don't know much about the UK, so I'm specifically going to be talking about the US pay gap here. In the US, we talk about how women earn 77 cents on the dollar for a man makes. I mean, I heard that statistic like 8 or 9 years ago. I don't know if that's exactly still true, but that's often the one that's been getting thrown around. Because of that, you often have two sides to this debate that try to propose solutions that don't work. You have a solution on often, like, I'm a feminist, y'all know that, I'm big on being a feminist. However, I disagree with a lot of feminist talking points on this issue, because you get a lot of feminists who will say, okay, well, if women are getting paid less for the same work, then we should legislate that you cannot discriminate based on gender. Well, gender is already a protected class. So that isn't going to do anything because it doesn't address the cause. You often then get anti-feminists on the other side who say, well, it is actually not for the same work because it is a statistic that encompasses all jobs and all careers. And because of that, the answer is that men are just choosing to go into higher paying careers and women are choosing to work fewer hours and things like that. So there really is nothing. We need to do nothing because there is no problem. Men and women actually get paid the same for the same work, and it's already illegal to discriminate on that. So you get those two sides, which are both stupid and solve nothing because like Jordan Peterson himself did say, we need to do a multivariate analysis. However, I think his multivariate analysis still sounds a little bit narrow in scope when he's talking about, okay, we break it down by age. I also think it's important to start studying where these trends seem to skew. When you have a trend that heavily skews one way or another, it's generally worth looking into. So I'm going to propose a bunch of ideas for the overall average earnings gap between men and women. I'm going to propose a bunch of ideas right here.
Some people say women work fewer hours than men do on average. Okay, are women choosing to work fewer hours, or are women being forced to work fewer hours by social pressure to be the one to raise the children, or even by social pressure that discriminates against men by acting as if men can't be as good of parents as women can? Are men being pressured into working more hours by that? Are both men and women experiencing discrimination in these ways because they're feeling pressured to do that? I don't know. I can't tell you for sure how that's happening. I'm just saying it's worth studying. Are women going into lower paying careers because they don't feel as much encouragement earlier on, or because so many women have had to be stay-at-home moms due to economic situations and social situations over the years that is the example they've seen, and it's been what's more internalized in them? Is that something we want to fix? I don't know. Again, it's something worth studying. Do men feel that leave the workforce to be a stay-at-home dad because they feel that people will judge them or will discriminate against them, or because in divorce court men are less likely to get awarded custody? Is that part of what plays into this? I don't know. It very well might be. Is the fact that over generations and generations men have been paid higher overall, is that like perpetuating a subconscious bias on the part of someone who decides to give a man a raise? Will they be more likely to see that without even realizing that they're kind of discriminating on a subconscious level? Maybe it's worth studying. A lot of times we see women going into an interview for a high-paying position. An employer might subconsciously think, oh, she could get pregnant, and if she gets pregnant, then we are going to have to, have her have maternity leave, and that's going to hurt our company and our bottom line overall. And so then they don't hire her, and they don't hire her not just because she's a woman or because she's pregnant or whatever, but they, maybe justify it in their head or do some projection to justify finding a reason.
I don't know. I'm not the clinical psychologist here. However, I think that all those things are worth studying. There are a million factors for why this happens, but the fact is, on average, men earn more money than women earn on average. And that is worth studying further. And I don't think we've studied it enough. I honestly don't think we've looked into it. I think that a lot of corporations take a very performative activist way of trying to solve it by being like, we'll give you a bonus if you refer women to this position or something. That's stupid. That's not going to do anything because it does nothing to address the cause of why that exists in the first place. So I think that both of them have a point, and both of them articulated it so poorly I want to explode.
Why should women be content
I'm not
not
saying
to
that
get
they
to
should
the top?
put up with it. I'm saying that
This is so stupid. Why did she even say
the wage gap between men and women is only due to sex is wrong, and it is
That's
wrong.
true.
There's
He's
no
right
doubt
that-
about
yeah,
that.
he's right
The
about that.
multivariate analysis have been done. So
Well,
I can give you an example.
keep on talking about
Wait a second.
multivariate analysis.
Let me give you an
but
example.
I'm saying that 9% pay gap exists.
Yeah.
That's a gap between men and women.
So she's right that they're both right here. He's right that there are multiple variables we need to consider, and she's right that it does exist. Honestly, these are not mutually exclusive ideas. They could just agree and shake hands right now and say, let's study this and make the world a better place. But they're not going to because this is for clicks.
I'm not saying why it exists, but it exists. Now,
But
if
you
you're
have
a
to say
woman,
why
that
it
seems
exists.
pretty unfair.
You have to say why it exists.
But do you agree that it's unfair? If you're a woman...
Not necessarily.
And on average, you're getting paid 9% less than a man. That's not fair, is it?
It depends on why it's happening. I can give you an example. Okay. There's a personality trait known as agreeableness. Agreeable people are compassionate and polite. And agreeable people get paid less than less agreeable people for the same job. Women are more agreeable than men.
Again, a vast generalization.
I know this is a casual discussion, so this is why a formal debate would have been better. And that's why I'm not expecting him to have every source memorized, but so many of these terms are vague concepts. What does it mean to be agreeable? Does it mean that you don't push back on anything? Does it mean you're polite to other people? Does it mean you're quieter? Does it mean you're less aggressive? And in what specific circumstances? Because overall, every human has moments of being agreeable and being, aggressive and pushing back on things. We're all complex beings who have a range of emotions. So, how is that measured? How is that studied? And then from there, I would ask, why? Why do you think women are more agreeable than men overall? Let's assume it's true. Let's be Ben Shapiro and go, let's assume for the sake of the argument, right? Let's assume for the sake of the argument that what he's saying is true and that on average, women are more agreeable to whatever wage they're given, or more agreeable to not getting the promotion or whatever, and less aggressive in the workplace. Let's say that women are more agreeable than men are overall. Why do you think women are more agreeable? Does it have to do with a higher level of estrogen in the brain? Does it have to do with the fact that women throughout history have seen social examples of why they should be agreeable? Is it from social messaging and cultural messaging? Is it a combination of those factors? Is it related to any of that? Does it have any, there's just so many ideas. And then on top of that, why do agreeable people get paid less? Is it because people won't give them a raise unless asked? And in that case, maybe the solution is actually to foster a culture where employees are comfortable talking about money openly in front of each other so that someone knows if someone else is getting paid more than them, rather than letting the employer kind of hold all that power. I'm just saying there are multiple things we're not even considering that don't even have to do with this. However, I will bring up the fact that, why should women put up with that? That's a stupid question. So, this whole thing is just a mess that could have been such a better discussion if you just had me in there. Why wasn't I invited?
Some
It's
women
not
are
a
not more
generalization.
agreeable than
Yes,
men.
that's true, but that's right. And some women get paid more than men.
So you were saying that by and large, women are too agreeable to get the pay rises they deserve.
No.
Okay, hold up real quick. Cathy Newman's hair is fantastic. Can I just point out how beautiful her hair is? Like, it has nothing to do with the discussion. I just want to give her a compliment because, like, I just want to know, like, what cream is she putting in that after? Like, is that curled with curlers? Because that looks natural to me. Like, you can tell when curls look natural. Her curls look natural. Like, I feel like she's put some cream in there, and I just want to know because, you know.
I'm saying that that's one component of a multivariate equation that predicts
That's fair.
salary. And there is prejudice, there's no doubt about that, but it accounts for a much smaller proportion.
Okay, so if he admits that there's prejudice, that still should be something we solve, yeah? Like, okay, anyway.
of the variance in the pay gap than the radical feminists claim.
Okay, so rather than denying the pay gap exists, which is what you did at the beginning of this conversation.
I don't know if I'd consider myself to be a radical feminist, because a lot of TERFs consider themselves to be radical feminists, and I don't want to be associated with them. But I would consider myself to be a pretty strong feminist, a pretty strong gender equality rights and LGBT rights person. I have pretty strong beliefs in those areas, considering I am a woman and a member of the LGBT community. Like, that all matters to me. So I don't like when it's like, but the radical feminists would have you believe. Again, I think even generalizing an ideology, I don't think is helpful. Because I don't, like, if you guys have seen the video I made about, you know, is Trump a cult leader, when I've made videos critiquing, like, conservative viewpoints, I never even say all conservatives believe this. I actually have some conservative audience members who have agreed with me on some things. Because, again, I think at the end of the day, a lot of humans have a common goal. So I think that generalizing is just not helpful, because when it comes down to it, I think we need to show more empathy to one another.
Shouldn't you say to women, rather than being agreeable and not asking for a pay rise, go and ask for a pay rise? Make yourself disagreeable with your boss.
Oh, definitely, there's that. But I also didn't deny it existed. I denied it existed because of gender.
Okay.
See, because I'm very, very, very careful with my word.
He denied it existed because of gender. However, in a previous sentence, he said that gender was one of the factors. He said it accounts for a smaller percentage than a lot of people think. However, he did still say it was one of the factors.
So the pay gap exists, you accept that. But you're saying, I mean, the pay gap between men and women exists. But you're saying it's not because of gender, it's because women are too agreeable to ask for pay rises. So
it's one of the reasons.
Okay, one of the reasons. So why not get them to...
Okay, again, this is where I think she's having a big problem, because she keeps it, and I don't know if this is an intentional straw man or if she is just, like, not being a very good listener, but she keeps, like, every time, like, I internalized and understood from the beginning what he was saying about a multivariate analysis. But she keeps being like, oh, so you're saying that it's this reason, and then it'd bring up, like, oh, well, this could be a potential reason. Like, he very clear, I will give that to him. He did very clearly frame that he was talking about a multivariate analysis here, and he did very clearly state that each of these were potentially one of the factors within there. So after each one he said, for her to turn around and be like, oh, so you're saying this is the reason? Like, that's just not productive to the argument, dude. That's just not productive.
To ask for a pay rise.
I've done
that be a fair way of
that
proceeding?
many, many times in my career.
And they just
I've counseled. Oh, they do it all the time. So one of the things that you do as a clinical psychologist is assertiveness training. I've had many, many women, extraordinarily competent women, in my clinical and consulting practice, and we put together strategies for their career development that involve continual pushing, competing for higher wages, and often tripled their wages within a 5-year period. Teaching them how to negotiate. That? Of course.
So, do you agree that you would be happy if that pay gap was eliminated completely? Because that's all the radical feminists are saying.
It would depend on how it was eradicated. And
okay, I think that, again, this is like a piece in the discussion where I'm like, you know, shake hands, hug each other, and come together, because y'all do have a common goal. If he's saying that he does like it when his female clients or his female patients end up getting paid more because they're able to, you know, ask for a raise or be more assertive, great. I think that's great. I still think it's worth it, and I think he's missing a huge opportunity by not trying to start the discussion or delve into why he thinks, on average, women are less assertive, or why he thinks women are more agreeable overall. Like, I feel like that's a huge piece of the puzzle, and maybe it's a thing that he works with on a patient-by-patient basis, which is absolutely fair as a psychologist to be doing that. However, I think for a part of a broader discussion, if he's going to bring up this point of women are more agreeable on average and need more assertiveness training, why? Why? Why do you think that resulted in the first place? What overall structures do you think might prevent that from continuing to happen? Because y'all remember, we talked about this in a debate, in an argument. When you're making an argument and proposing a solution, your solution should solve for the cause of the problem and not for the effect. If you solve for the effect of the problem, one, you're going to have it happen again because you didn't eliminate the root cause, and two, you might have misjudged what the actual problem was based on solely one effect and ended up not solving anything even remotely related to it. So I would say that he's on the right track, but not exactly right. I do agree with what he's saying here, though, about it depends how it was eliminated. Again, that's actually one feminist talking point that I don't really agree with overall, which is that, you know, to eliminate the wage gap, we need to be passing more laws about this and things like that, because I think a lot of these things that are happening that are discriminatory are already legal under the guise of something that would not be outlawed under one of these things. I don't think it would effectively change anything. So I think when he's talking about how it's eliminated, I think it needs to be eliminated through, you know, greater social awareness and greater study of what caused it in the first place. And I think he and I would probably be in agreement on that.
And you're saying if it's at the cost of men, that's a problem?
Oh, there's all sorts of things that it could be at the cost of. It could even be at the cost of women's own interest.
Okay, so this is again where she messed up. She pulled that out of her ass, right? Which he's like, oh, because, so you're, like, he said nothing about men in that case. So she made that argument up. That was a straw man. There is nothing else you can call that. He comes out here and is like, so it depends how it was eliminated. And she's like, oh, so you're saying that you wouldn't want it to be eliminated at the expense of men. She made that up, dude. He didn't say anything close to that. That is a poor argumentation technique.
Interests. So.
Because they might not be happy if they get equal pay.
No, because it might interfere with other things that are causing the pay gap that women are choosing to do.
Like having children.
Well, or choosing careers that actually happen to be paid less, which women do a lot of.
But why shouldn't women have the right?
Okay, when she says, why shouldn't women have whatever, she asked the wrong question. Again, he brought up a point, which overall I don't think is that good of a point. However, he comes out looking like the smart one on top because she asked the wrong question. She should have responded to that by saying, well, why do you think the careers that women choose to go into more often are paid less? Why do you think the market values those careers less? What multifaceted, multivariable analyses can you do of the market, of the free market out there, depending on whether you live in a mostly capitalist country or not, that would determine that in the first place? Why do you think in such greater numbers women are choosing to go into fields that the market doesn't value as financially highly as other fields? Why do you think there are different trends towards what men and women have interest in? And if you don't know, maybe don't talk about it until you've studied it further. Like, that would be what I would ask. But instead of asking, well, why should we, like, these questions are so specific to the point where they're derailing the conversation away from what it should really be about.
Right to choose not to have children, or the right to choose those demanding careers.
They do. They can. Yeah, that's fine.
But you're saying that makes them unhappy, by and large.
I'm saying no, I'm not saying that.
Yeah, she's making shit up. This is the problem. Jordan Peterson never, like, I can't believe I'm, like, close to defending him at this point because she's doing such a bad job right now. Again, this is why I get so annoyed where it's like, Jordan Peterson slam dunks on this feminist, because I don't know if she's just, like, a bad debater, or I don't know if she went into this expecting an interview rather than a debate or what, but this conversation is just a mess. It is just a mess. I want to be the one to interview Jordan Peterson instead.
And I actually haven't said that so far.
You're saying it makes them miserable?
No, I said that what was making them miserable was having weak partners.
So here's the problem, right? I have mixed feelings on the fact that Jordan Peterson claims he's taken out of context so much, and a lot of people claim he's taken out of context all the time. I think situations like this, where we see right here what she's saying and how she keeps kind of almost intentionally twisting what he's saying, you can clearly see why he would feel taken out of context from this argument, which gives him more ammo to turn around and be like, I was the victim here. It was me. I'm always being taken out of context. At the same time, the amount that he claims to be taken out of context, which is like constantly, like if you're constantly being taken out of context that much and you're a professional writer and speaker, you should probably get better at saying exactly what you mean, because if this many people are constantly misinterpreting you, you might be the problem. However, in this case, I would say they're both the problem. This discussion is so dumb.
All women are different. And that's what I want to just put another quote to you from the book.
Well, they're different in some ways and the same in others.
Literally, in what, I want him to tell me this, in what way are all women the same? I cannot think of a single thing that every single woman I know has in common. I know women who don't have a vagina, dude. Like, there is nothing that every single woman has in common. So in what way are they all the same? All women are human, I guess, but so are men.
Okay, you say women become more vulnerable when they have children.
Oh, yes.
And you talk...
Why didn't she ask? Why didn't she ask? In what ways are all women the same?
Simple question. Is gender equality a myth in your view? Is that something that's just never going to happen?
Where is this discussion going?
We could get to a point where people were treated fairly or more fairly. I mean, people are treated pretty fairly in Western culture already, but we can.
But they're really not, though, are they? I mean, otherwise,
Well,
why would there only be 7 women running FTSE 100 companies in the UK?
What's happening here is that he's being too vague and she's being too specific. It's good that she's being specific, but she's being specific in a way that she doesn't have an overall thesis.
Why would there still be a pay gap, which we've
well,
discussed
that's
at length?
easy to
Why are
answer
women
that
at the
question.
BBC saying that they're getting paid illegally less than men to do the same job?
Well,
that's not fair, is
let's
it?
go to the first question. Those are complicated questions. Seven women. Repeat that one. There's
7
only
women running the top FTSE 100 companies in the UK.
Okay, well,
Okay, so there's 100 top companies in the UK, 93 of them are run by men, and 7 of them are run by women. I'm assuming none of them are run by non-binary people because... we want to talk about, like, the trans success gap. That's a huge thing to talk about. No.
why would you want to do that?
Why would a man want to do it? I
Well,
mean, it's a lot of money, it's an interesting
there's a
job,
certain
you know?
number of men, although not that many, who are perfectly willing to sacrifice virtually all of their life to the pursuit of a high-end career. So they'll work.
I mean, that's me. I mean, I'm not a man, but I would absolutely, I know that kind of makes me a dick sometimes, and again, this is why I think I would be a terrible parent, because I am that person who's like, 100-hour work week? Sign me up, dude. Like, absolutely. I have a work addiction. It's fine. I would never prescribe that life to someone else if it's not what they want. But my point is, why is that a male thing?
These are men that are very intelligent. They're usually very, very conscientious. They're very driven. They're very high energy. They're very healthy. And they're willing to work 70 or 80 hours a week, nonstop,
70 or 80, dude, get on my level, Jordan Peterson. Back when I was in grad school, I worked 95 to 100-hour work weeks. It was amazing. It was amazing. I had just started my business. I had just started grad school. I was working 7 jobs at once while getting married. Oh, dude, I didn't even get to take my honeymoon until 2 years later. Holy shit, workaholic life. I know people who are not workaholics and who value work-life balance are probably very sad listening to all of that. But no, dude, I fucking love it. I love it.
specialized at one thing to get to the top.
So you're saying women are just more sensible. They
It's
don't want that
me.
because it's not a nice life.
I'm saying that's part of it, definitely. And so I work
So you
for...
don't think there are barriers in their way that prevent them getting to the top
Oh,
of
there
those
are some.
companies?
So here's one of the barriers, right? Which I don't think he considered, because when he said that there are men who are willing to do that, there are women who are willing to do that too. But a lot of women, if a couple wants to have a biological child, a lot of women are going to be the one that has to physically carry that child. So in a lot of cases, there tends to be covert discrimination when that woman goes on maternity leave and her to physically recover from having that baby and then comes back and is struggling. Or even you hear cases of women who are so career focused that they come back without even taking maternity leave. They just have the baby and boom, back to work, which then can lead to physical health issues. So then that makes them less physically healthy, which he also stated was a requirement. Multivariable analysis, dude. Where's your multivariable analysis?
barriers, yeah, like men, for example.
Is gender equality a myth?
What does that mean?
I don't know what you mean by the question.
Okay,
Men and women
okay.
aren't the same, and they won't be the same. That doesn't mean they can't be treated fairly.
Is gender equality desirable?
If it means
What do you mean? Started off with, let's say that equality means this. Let's say that equality means that at the top 100 companies, 50 of the top CEOs are women and 50 are men, or maybe with a 5 to 10% margin of error, it would never be more than a 60-40 split or something. Is that what you mean by equality? By equality, do you mean that everyone is treated absolutely equally in every way and the outcomes might vary? Like, what do you mean by equality?
quality of outcome, then almost certainly it's undesirable. That's already been demonstrated in Scandinavia.
Oh, I'm interested to hear what happened in Scandinavia. I really hope he elaborates on that. If equality of outcome is forced in a way that addresses the wrong root cause, I can see how that would be undesirable because you end up with other negative externalities. However, if equality of outcome happens because you are treating everyone equally in a way that gives equal opportunities that result in equal outcomes, I don't see how that could be undesirable, but I hope he elaborates.
Because in
What
Scandinavia...
do you mean by that? Equality of outcome is undesirable.
Well, men and women won't...
How about you don't interrupt him, because I want to hear, he was about to tell me what happened in Scandinavia, and I was genuinely interested, Cathy.
Those are ineradicable differences. You can eradicate them with tremendous social pressure and tyranny. But if
What are
you
the
leave men and women to
differences?
make their own choices,
What are
you will
the
not get
differences?
equal outcomes.
Right, so you're saying that anyone who believes in equality...
Oh my god, if she says so you're saying one more time, I wish it wasn't too early to take shots. I would take a shot every time she said, so you're saying, I'd be drunk within 10 minutes.
See, whether you call them feminists, call them whatever you want to call them, should basically give up because it ain't going to happen.
Only if they're aiming at equality of outcome.
So you're saying give people equality of opportunity, that's fine.
It's not only fine, it's eminently desirable for everyone, for individuals and for society.
But
Is his argument here that equality of opportunity will not lead to equality of outcome, and that's okay?
so the simple question is, do you believe in equal pay?
It's not a simple question, dude. She's like, the simple question is. That is such a complex thing to say. There's no measurement to determine by which what work is truly equal because of the multivariate analysis. Why didn't she ask him further about that? Like, can you talk about some of the different ways to measure equality of work, or some of the different ways to measure how much work someone has done, whether that's through time or through effort or through physical exertion, or what? Like, why didn't she ask that? Instead, she just turned around and said, so let's oversimplify this. Do you believe in equal pay?
I made the argument there. It's like it depends on
So
who
you don't
defines
believe
it.
in equal pay?
I wish I had my bourbon. So you don't believe in equal pay. So you're saying this. So you're saying this. Dude, she's making him look like the good guy by how bad her responses are to things. And this is frustrating because you guys know how much I hate Jordan Peterson and how absolutely frustrated I get by him at all times. But she's making it like this is not a good look for anyone. Oh, God.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Because a lot of people listening to you will just say, I mean, are we going back to the dark
That's
ages
because they're actually
here?
not listening. They're
I'm
just
listening very
projecting
carefully,
what
and
they
I'm
think.
hearing you basically...
To be fair, yes. So this is why I think, like, I'm trying my best to listen to him, and that's why I'd love to interview him. I want to hear him actually articulate these points, because I don't think she's asking good enough questions. And I have tried listening to his lectures, and they just kind of go all over the place. And again, it's a thing where I think I just need to talk to him one-on-one. She kind of did prove his point a little bit, where he said, like, people aren't listening to me, they're projecting. And she immediately turns that around with, so you're saying this? Like, no, dude, that's projecting. That's doing exactly what he just told you not to do. So this is just, it's such an unproductive discussion. I want to explode.
basically saying women need to just accept they're never going to make it on equal terms.
He never
equal
said
outcomes
that.
is how you defined it.
Here's the thing, Jordan Peterson is a sexist piece of trash, but if she's going to keep bringing up fake sexist things that he didn't say, it's just going to make him look like less of a sexist piece of trash.
The domain of physical conflict is sort of off limits for you.
Well,
Why?
you just said
Rather
that I
unfortunate.
fought to get where I've got.
Why? Why is physical combat why is it off limits to women but not to men? Physical violence and assaulting other people is illegal everywhere in the US pretty much. And we talked on Monday about begging the question and how Ben Shapiro falls into this fallacy of treating something as a given within an argument and treating it as a given as if the question that you're asking has already been answered, and making the argument based on the presupposed already answer to the question rather than actually answering it yourself and explaining it. So he's treating this as if, like, oh, it's a given that men are more physically violent than women. I think that is true across the board, but the question still remains of why. Because right now we're talking about root causes. We're talking about how men and women advance in society and advance in their careers. So if we're going to look into root causes and talk about why, it's important for him to delve into the answers to those questions instead of just, oh, it's a given that men are more physically combative than women are. It's a given. Why? Is it related to the testosterone in their brains? Like, Why? What is it?
Yeah, but
What does that make me?
well,
A
I
sort of
don't
proxy
imagine.
man or
I
something?
don't imagine that yeah, to some degree. I suspect you're not very agreeable.
So that's the thing. Successful women. I'm not very agreeable.
Right.
But
I've noticed that
successful-
actually in this conversation.
At least
and
we
I'm
can have
sure
a
it's,
joke.
Okay, actually, that was kind of cute. I'm not going to lie. For both of them, that was a cute moment.
so. For
Where's the
example,
evidence?
well, I can give you an example very quickly.
Please
so
do.
I worked with women who worked in high-powered law firms in Canada for about 15 years, and they were as competent and put together as anybody you would ever meet. And we were trying to figure out how to further their careers. And there was a huge debate in Canadian society at that point that was basically ran along the same lines as your argument, is that if the law firms didn't use these masculine criteria, then perhaps women would do better. But the market sets the damn game. It's like...
And the market is dominated by men.
No,
So
it's
what I'm
not. It's
asking
not.
you-
The market is dominated by women. They make...
Okay, so this is interesting. Where we're talking about free market here, right? That the idea that women make the majority of purchasing decisions and men make the majority of job decisions. Overall, capitalism dominates the market. So there's just more root causes here than what we're talking about. I think it's a little bit of a weird question to ask. Why should women have to fight for the, like, even if it were, like, even men have to fight each other for the top positions, it would make sense that women and men would have to fight other women and other men and each other for the top positions, because if they're in high demand and there's only a few of them, that does make sense. Social expectations for what is considered powerful or what is considered competent have been standards set by masculinity, just because men have been the ones who have held positions of power in government, in law enforcement, and all of those things for the majority of history. So men did dictate the culture for a while. However, he also has a good point here, which is that if women make most of the purchasing decisions, then women dictate market values. However, that's not always completely true either. So again, there's multivariate analysis time.
80% of the consumer decisions. That's not the case
What?
at all.
If you're talking
80%.
about people who stay at home looking after children, by and large, they are still women. So they're going out doing the shopping. But that is changing.
They make all
Anyway,
the
what I
consumer
want to ask you-
decisions.
Okay, so
the
what I want to
market
ask
is
you-
driven by
okay.
women, not men.
Right.
Okay, and if you're a lawyer
And they
in
still
Canada...
pay more for the same sort of goods. That's been
Oh, that's
proven,
such an,
men
that
for the-
is
you
so,
buy-
no, okay, that is such an irrelevant argument. Why did she bring that up? She's fucking derailing this conversation. I'm not saying it's not worth talking about that. I'm saying that that is not relevant. He has a problem with this too in his lectures. Both of these people need to learn when what they're saying is irrelevant and to just focus on one thing. Have another debate if you want to talk about the pink tax or whatever, which again, I think it's a thing where if we're going to live in capitalism, we got to vote with our dollars. Women and men have the choice of what products they can pay for. Like, I use men's deodorant just because I like the smell of it. So it's really, that's a matter of personal.
Blue bicycle helmet is going to cost less than a pink one. Anyway,
think
we'll come on
that's
to
true.
that.
Partly because men are less agreeable. Right, so they won't put up with it.
This
I
is
wanna ask
just
Is
on a
it not
different
desirable to have some of those female traits you're talking about? I'd say that's a generalization, but you've used the words female traits. Is it not desirable to have some of them at the top of business? I mean, maybe there wouldn't have
They
been
don't predict
a
success.
banking crisis.
They
if
don't
that
predict
happened.
success in the workplace. The things that predict success in the workplace are intelligence and conscientiousness. Agreeableness negatively predicts success in the workplace. And
So
so
you're
does
saying
high
that-
negative emotion.
You're saying that women aren't.
Okay, first of all, before I take a fucking shot for her going, so you're saying again, I think that he brings up the multivariate analysis when it benefits his own research and his own ideas, but doesn't bring it up when it comes to himself questioning things. And I think this is a key problem with Jordan Peterson. When RK and I were doing the podcast talking about him, we talked about how he seems to value authority over curiosity, and how people who are constantly curious and constantly want to question their own beliefs and want to learn more about things and want to figure things out and see if maybe they're wrong and can learn something new and grow. People who have that curiosity that never ends tend to be people who end up having a greater impact and being smarter. And I do think he's smart. I do think he's a very well-researched person, but he does seem to be in this place where he is now like, okay, I know all of these things. I have authority to speak on this, as opposed to, that's an interesting point. What are your ideas on that? Here's what my research says. Now tell me yours. We can put our ideas together. He talks about agreeability negatively correlates with income, and intelligence and competence, which again is vague. Like, does he mean like that you fulfill your job requirements well? Like, competence in what specifically? But that those things positively correlate with income or with job performance or with ascension in the corporate ladder. Why? why are those things correlated? I think we need a multivariate analysis on this, dude. The way I would see it, just as a business owner myself, I would say that all intelligence, competence, agreeability, I think all of these things are important. Again, I don't really know what he means by agreeability. I don't know if I'm an agreeable person or not. I'm a pretty easy to please person. Like, I'm very easily amused. I'm pretty a cheap date. Maybe because I'm argumentative, I'm not agreeable in that sense. So again, I think there needs to be more definition of these terms and more analysis of why these things correlate the way they do and where that comes from.
Intelligent enough to run these top companies?
No, I didn't say that at all.
You said that female traits don't predict success.
But I didn't say that intelligence wasn't. I didn't say that intelligence and conscientiousness
Well, you were saying
weren't female
intelligence and
traits.
conscientiousness by implication are not female traits.
No,
I mean, that's very dangerous
I'm
territory.
not saying that at all.
Oh my god, I have such a headache.
Women are less intelligent than men?
No, they're not. No, the data on that's pretty clear. The average IQ for a woman and the average IQ for a man is identical. There is some debate about the flatness of the distribution, which is something that James Damore pointed out, for example, in his memo, but there's no difference at all in general cognitive ability. There's no difference to speak of in conscientiousness. Women are a bit more orderly than men, and men are a little bit more industrious than women.
But I thought, okay, in his book he specifically said that chaos was the feminine and order was the masculine, but now he said that women are more orderly. I am lost.
But that averages into
Plenty of men who
conscientiousness.
aren't necessarily
Well, of course.
But
no,
female
but
traits,
last-
though, why are they not?
Feminine traits.
Why are they not desirable at the top of feminine traits? Why are they not desirable at the top of
It's hard to say. I'm just laying out the empirical evidence. Like we know the traits that predict success.
But we also know, because companies by and large have not been dominated by women over the centuries, it's an experiment.
True, and it could be the case that if companies modified their behavior and became more feminine, then they would be successful. But
You
there's no
seem doubtful
evidence
about
for it. I'm not neither doubtful.
There's no evidence for or against it. So I think this is actually an interesting idea here of like, what if somebody wanted to start a business and the way that they ran their business was through solely agreeability and solely whatever he's defining as these feminine characteristics, which I still haven't seen any evidence women are more likely to have them than men. I'm sure he has a study about this or something, but it would be nice, I think, if he tried to back that up a little bit, because I don't know how to take that for a given when it hasn't been my experience. Even if we're going to say, for the sake of the argument, that women are more agreeable overall and men are more, aggressive and hardworking or whatever, I don't know. If we want to say that, then it might be interesting to try a company where agreeability is one of the company's core values or something like that, and see how profitable it is. And then there's also the idea that the economic system that governs your country is going to have an effect on how companies are profitable. And I'm not suggesting, I'm not an economist, I don't have the solution, but I think depending on how your country operates in that way and what government incentives there are for innovation versus what incentives there are for the market to solely dictate itself based on purchasing power of those who already have money from generational wealth, that is going to make a huge difference as well in terms of what is successful and what isn't. So again, the multivariate analysis goes bigger than any of us could have ever predicted.
Well, nor non-doubtful. There's no evidence
So why
for
not
it.
give it a go, as the radical
Because the evidence
feminists would
suggests,
say?
well, it's fine. If someone wants to start a company and make it
I say do it, guys.
and caring in its overall orientation towards its workers and towards the marketplace, then that's a perfectly reasonable experiment to run.
Compassion towards workers has overall negatively affected the company's profits or innovation or things like that. And I would say overall that even if that is true, we've talked about this on this channel before, that just because a company is operating legally doesn't mean they're operating ethically. That just, even when we talk about the anti-MLM world and how people want to eliminate MLM companies and pyramid schemes and things like that, even a company that operates with a salary, that operates with an hourly wage, eliminating those things is going to be the first step, but then after that we need to look at how are companies that are operating completely legally potentially exploiting workers as well. So even if a company is more profitable without compassion toward workers, is it more ethical? And so I think that depends what metric he's using to define success. Is he using to define success based on ethics or based on purely on profit? And that's where I guess they're talking about the pay gap. There's so much more to it than that. If anything, that seems like a very small component.
My point is that there is no evidence that those traits predict success in the workplace. And there's
Because it's
this
never
evidence
been
is,
tried.
Well, that's not really the case. Women have been in the workplace for at least ever since I've been around, the representation of women in the workplace has been about 50%. So we've run the experiment for a fairly...
I don't think that's true that they've run the experiment. The representation of women in the workplace has changed over time. Again, he talks about multivariate analysis, but he is really looking at one variable right here, which is the idea that, well, women have been in the workplace 50-50 for decades. Sure, but a lot of women were holding lower paying jobs because men were the ones who were in control of that, and you used to be able to discriminate against pregnancy and things like that. And there are a lot fewer protections out there for working mothers, and that has been getting better. But to say that this experiment with complete equality of opportunity has been going on for all these decades is, I think, just objectively false. So I think he's ignoring some of the variables while going on about the multivariate analysis.
Reasonable period of time, but not, certainly not for centuries.
Let me move on to another debate that's been very controversial for you.
You got in trouble for refusing to call trans men and women by their preferred personal pronouns.
No, that's not actually true. I got in trouble because I said I would not follow the compelled speech dictates of the federal and provincial government. I actually...
Okay, y'all, I'll link it up in the cards. Watch the podcast live stream that RK and I did on the Your Morning Guru channel, where we were following Jordan Peterson, and we looked up the law in Canada that he's talking about, and he's kind of misrepresenting it. There is no actual infringement on freedom of speech in this law. We actually did I'll link a couple of the things we did, and the cards are in the description. Because we talked about this a lot, and we pulled up the law, we pulled up the bill, and we looked at it. Basically what it was is that it's an anti-discrimination law, or that added trans people as a protected class to it. The law didn't say that you will go to jail or experience government punishment of any kind if you don't use the right pronoun. It even specifically said, if you use the wrong pronoun, you're not going to go to jail, or it even said, like everyone who's analyzed this has basically said that. So he's been kind of arguing against something that didn't exist. He's been kind of blowing the problem out of proportion. Now, whether you want to argue about whether hate speech should be a crime at all, that's another thing, whether you want to argue about that, but there was no legal threat towards him for not using the right pronouns to begin with. People just think you're an asshole because of it, which, in a free country, we all have the right to think anyone is an asshole. I think he's an asshole for not wanting to use the right pronouns. I don't think he's an asshole for opposing someone trying to dictate how he can speak from a government perspective, but that didn't happen. He made that up.
Never got in trouble for not calling anyone anything.
Right.
That didn't happen.
You wouldn't follow the change of law, which was designed
not
to
once
outlaw
it was law.
discrimination.
No.
Well,
that's what they said it was designed to do.
Okay, you cited freedom of speech in that. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Could we have a worse debate question? Could we have a stupider thing to ask? Because this is the part that got memed into oblivion. This is the part that he's about to respond right here, and this is the part that got all the YouTube headlines. Jordan Peterson destroys feminist. Jordan Peterson destroys trans rights argument. I blame him for for being stupid about this, but I also blame her for asking, the stupidest question possible. Here's the thing. In a world where we have free speech, which, to be fair, we're talking about Canada here. I don't know much about Canadian law other than having looked up this specific law for the purpose of, discussing his interpretation of it and all of that. If you are a lawyer in Canada, feel free to correct me in the comments below. I know that in the US, we talk about freedom of speech a lot too. And freedom of speech, basically means that you can say anything you want and the government cannot punish you. It doesn't mean other people aren't going to think you're a dick. It doesn't mean a private company isn't going to fire you. It means that you can say whatever you want without the government taking legal action against you. And in the UK, I know they don't have the exact same freedom of speech protections that we have in the US. I don't know specifically what protections Canada has for that. So for her to say that, if we're talking, it's reframing the argument. Is the argument about legal freedom of speech, or is it about, are you a dick for doing this? Because she basically combined those two arguments and combined two questions and shifted the frame of reference partway through. And that's the problem. When she asks a question that says, why should your freedom of speech be more important than a trans person's right not to be offended? Those are two different things. Then they could also coexist. These are not mutually exclusive things. We can make the argument that if Jordan Peterson intentionally uses the wrong pronouns for someone, he is a dick, and he is being mean to that person. But I don't think anyone wanted to arrest him for that. He made that up. So his freedom of speech was already protected as much as Canada already does. I don't know. Again, I don't know much about how Canada works. This question is just, it doesn't make sense. It is a question that sounds like it makes sense, but doesn't make sense. And he can tell, like, look at his face. He can tell that it doesn't make sense. And that's why he's about to destroy it. Except the way he destroys it is very performative, because he could just destroy it by being like, well, those things can coexist. We can have freedom of speech, and I can... But again, like, why would he even bring up that law? That law, like, oh my God.
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like, you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I've exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on.
So
and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
Here's my opinion on all of this. Respect trans people. Call them by their pronouns that they tell you to call them by the name that they tell you to call them by, and that doesn't just go for trans people, that goes for literally everyone. If you have a kid in your class and you can call him Billy instead of William, you can call a trans person by their right name and pronouns. It's not hard. So you can do that. But at the same time, freedom of speech was never actually threatened, because the bill never said you could go to jail for using the wrong pronoun. It didn't even say that in the beginning. Like, he made it up. This whole argument is pointless.
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head. Yeah, it took a while.
It did, yeah.
Took a while.
So what did all of you think of this discussion? What were your thoughts on this debate? I know that it was kind of a longer discussion. Jordan Peterson, debate me daddy, debate me lobster daddy, come on my channel and we will have a discussion together. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. I really want to know what you guys are thinking about this, and please don't forget to subscribe to the second channel. Don't forget to check out all the links. Today's video was brought to you by my Patreon supporters. Thank you all so much for supporting this channel. Don't forget to check out the links in the description below, because my Patreon supporters, top tier supporters, $5 a month and up, have all of their own links down there as well, so you'll want to show them some love. Thank you all for watching today. I'm really glad you were here. I'll see you again soon. In the meantime, don't forget to support small businesses and have a fantastic Friday. Bye!
Get you some nuts.
There was lots of memes.
Makes me wonder if I should take up lesbianism.
Chicago. You guys asked for it.